On Experiences Matter, which is the second in a multiple part series we're doing on women and girls in STEM issues. Those of you who tuned into our last briefing heard a briefing around veterans in STEM careers. And today we're going to talk about girls, STEM, and experiences, and why high quality experiences matter, why confidence matters, and why getting access to good mentorship and career models matter. So it's a very momentous day in Washington for a couple of different reasons. The President of the United States just signed the Violence Against Women Act. It's the week of Pi Day, which was on Monday, and it's the day after International Women's Day. So with that in mind, I wanted to start off by saying, this briefing will explore the different issues surrounding particularly middle school girls and girls who were aspiring to the STEM careers through the lens of the kinds of experiences they have both inside and outside the classroom, and how that influences their perceptions of STEM fields and their choices in terms of their careers. And just to set the bar, women are a little more than half of the population. They're a little more than that in the college population, and they're only about 25% of the STEM workforce, depending on the different fields. So that is the issue at hand. So let me start with our first panelist, Dr. Crystal Miller, Director of Fellowships in Science, Research, and Engineering, Kettering Fund Chair for Student Research. Crystal?
Hi, thank you, James. I also want to thank the other panelists for joining us for this discussion and everyone else who is tuning in. As James mentioned, I am the Director of the Science, Research, and Engineering program. We call it the SREP at Hathaway Brown School, which is an all-girls school near Cleveland, Ohio. So at Hathaway Brown, all of our K-12 students are girls, and I am continually impressed with their creativity, their ingenuity, and their brilliance. And our country ends up missing out on half the potential brain power available when we fail to support women educationally and professionally. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And James actually touched on a couple of these figures. But today, women make up 52% of the college-educated workforce, but only 29% of those in science and engineering. These numbers are actually from 2017, but that 29% has only increased from 26% in 2003. So why have women in S&E fields only increased 3 percentage points in 14 years? And why are we not seeing a greater increase in these occupations? If you read the literature, there are a number of explanations, including gender stereotypes, fewer role models, and male-dominated cultures. But a pervasive obstacle that is harder to measure is confidence, or what is often referred to as the confidence gap. This manifests in attitudes and expectations around STEM careers as early as kindergarten for girls. It is noticeable in the focus of girls on their grades and on performance on tests in high school, and it reoccurs throughout early and late career in the form of imposter syndrome. Interestingly, this confidence gap is especially prominent in math, physical science, and engineering, those fields with the lowest representation of women. The Science, Research, and Engineering program was started at Hathaway Brown in 1998 to encourage our women to pursue STEM fields. The HB, for Hathaway Brown, high school student body, averages around 380 students, and of those, 25 to 30%, or about 100 to 120 students, are usually involved in SREP. It is an extracurricular program and is not a requirement. Students join the SREP in 9th or 10th grade through an introductory class, and by the end of 10th grade, they are matched with a researcher at a local institution based on the interests they identified through classroom activities. Students work with the day-to-day mentor, like a graduate student or a technician in the lab who teaches them techniques and the specialized information. This placement, as we call them, lasts for a full 2 to 3 years throughout their high school career. And eventually, the student earns the privilege to work on an original research project of her own that aligns with the lab's overarching goals. The necessity of planning schedules and working through conflicts, in addition to the nature of research and inherent setbacks, develops them professionally and technically and builds soft skills. Meanwhile, in class, students are supported by learning how to locate and read literature to bolster scientific literacy. They practice sharing work through their posters and oral presentations, and their experience culminates in the writing of a formal research paper. The benefits of these experiences are on the screen, and they reflect many of the recommendations that help women persevere in STEM. For example, this experience happens as they're leaving middle school and entering high school. So they're being placed in a lab in 9th or 10th grade. And this has been shown to be a critical time frame for STEM interest. It also provides an out-of-school experience. This gives students the chance to act autonomously without direct teacher or parental oversight, while they're developing collegial relationships with other adults. And this learning structure has been shown to be one of the best predictors of personal growth experiences. Students are exposed to women role models in these STEM occupations, and it overcomes a lack of confidence lodged in perceived incompetence. So students set out on a project that initially seems insurmountable, essentially something they probably haven't learned anything about yet in school. And they come out on the other end their senior year as the expert, explaining it to their peers, as well as writing about it. And some students even contribute to professional publications. Given the history and the nature of the SREP, we found we were in a unique position to capture the impact of the program on participants. Therefore, in 2018, we performed a longitudinal study on 20 years of SREP alumni. This included those from 1998 to 2018, which is about 495 alumni. The study was accepted for publication in the open access journal PLOS One and was published this past November. Some of the highlights are that students who participate in the SREP were more likely to be awarded a STEM major in college. And you can see here outlined in red that 61.5% compared to 28.4% of females nationally. Since HB students are not necessarily representative of the national student population, we also compared them to their peers at our school who did not participate in SREP, and that found that participants were still significantly more likely to major in a STEM field. Similarly, we compared occupations amongst those reporting and found that SREP alumni were significantly more likely to be in a STEM occupation than their non-SREP counterparts from Hathaway Brown, as well as both the females and males nationally. Finally, when asked to reflect on the impact of SREP participation, 66% of respondents credited an increase in confidence, and similar numbers cited empowerment and various technical skills. In general, SREP alumni believe their experience strengthens critical character traits and teaches skills that prepare them for future careers. So we find that this multi-year commitment allows the student time to develop and establish confidence in herself and her abilities, and helps bridge that confidence gap that is often cited as one facet of why women leave STEM. And we think that experiential programs like this for other high school girls could really be a successful step to increase women in STEM.
Thank you, Crystal. Our next speaker is Dr. Joshua Whitten, Director of Research and Inquiry at South Carolina's Governor's School for Science and Mathematics. Josh?
Thank you, James. Our name is a mouthful to get through. I'd like to begin by thanking the other panelists, the STEM Education Coalition for hosting this event. I'd also like to thank everybody in the audience for choosing to spend your valuable time with us. As James said, I'm the Director of Research and Inquiry at the South Carolina Governor's School for Science and Mathematics, or GSSM for short. GSSM is a public STEM high school in Hartsville, South Carolina, with application-based admissions. We were established in 1988. Our residential program serves up to 288 students, half of them male, half of them female, in the 11th and 12th grades. GSSM also has an online engineering certificate program called Accelerate and an online degree program called STEM Foundations, which enrolled its first class this school year. GSSM's outreach department delivers STEM education experiences statewide that impact more than 4,000 additional K-12 students. Currently, our outreach department is hosting an all-female cohort of local 8th and 9th graders working on coding in Python through our Engage program. All of our academic programs require students to complete at least one mentored research and inquiry experience. That is approximately 130 to 150 students each year. For our residential program, this takes the form of a 6-week full-time research internship during the summer after their junior year in a professional research group around the state, the country, and in pre-COVID times around the world. Because we only have access to our students for 2 years in our residential program, our program does not have the extended preparation or follow-up time as Dr. Miller shared with Hathaway Brown. Our experiences are shorter, but they're intense and immersive. These experiences are very similar to a research experience for undergraduates, but conducted with a rising senior in high school. We also have school year research opportunities on our campus with our faculty, 95% of whom have PhDs in their field. Students in our Accelerate Engineering Certificate Program and STEM Foundations diploma programs complete their research and inquiry experiences as part of their high school year curriculum, but we also extend the option to participate in our summer mentored research and inquiry experiences to them. Like the Hathaway Brown students, we view the communication about projects as being very important. We have our students communicate through a research and inquiry portfolio, which includes both written elements and a public presentation of their research. We find that the portfolio helps the students develop transferable communication skills, reinforce their understanding of their project, and reflect on their own growth through the experience, which is essential for building their confidence in their capabilities. While I cannot comment directly in terms of the confidence of a young woman coming up in STEM from my own lived experience, my experience from working with our female students is that they have a lifetime of socialization and representation telling them that they do not belong in STEM careers, and that bridging that confidence gap is essential. Our experiential program tackles this question of confidence, frankly, both for our male and female students in several ways. First, there's no substitute for having a professional in a field where you are not sure you belong invite you to participate as part of their group. Our research mentors literally tell our students, you belong here. Second, our students have to do this experience. In our program, it is a requirement, so no amount of doubt or uncertainty keeps you from the experience. Third, we give our students permission to not know what they are doing. They are 16, 17, 18 years old. They cannot match the experience level of a tenured faculty member. All we ask from them is their effort, and we focus on what they can control about their experience, which is the process, not the outcomes, rather than the things that they can't. We don't set them up to fail. Fourth, we don't just believe in our students, we know that they can succeed. We've been doing this for 30 plus years at our school, and so we have that history on our side when we tell them that we know that they can do that. And we make sure to communicate that to them early and often. When I think about the confidence question, a particular student that we had recently comes to mind. She wasn't certain she wanted to do research at all. She definitely was thinking she might want to spend her summer at the beach instead of in a research lab in Columbia, South Carolina. Very early on in the project, she made a very typical mistake for a young researcher and was convinced that she was going to fail. And in a traditional lab class, she may have. Instead, in this context, because the mentor had her working on a project that he cared about also and cared about the student, he helped her elegantly redesign the experiment. Despite the added complexity, her experience gave her a detailed grasp of the experiment and the techniques involved in conducting it, as well as a great ability to explain it to others. This student, by going through that challenge, now wants to make a career out of genetics research. She voluntarily wrote up her project and is applying for undergraduate research fellowships. She has the confidence where she has shared her experience, including owning her mistake and what she's learned from that journey with our board of trustees and with prospective GSSM students when they visit the campus. She still apologizes a little bit too much, but 18-year-old me would have loved to have half the earned confidence that this student has coming out of that experience. At GSSM, we're lucky in the way we're able to make these arrangements that we have the very strong support of our partner institutions around the state, our state General Assembly, our governor, and our donors. A lot of schools are not so fortunate and don't have the resources to apply to these experiences that we do. And so closing, one of the things I want to address very briefly is some avenues we can pursue to allow us to sustain and expand access to these kinds of experiences at other schools, not just ones as fortunate as GSSM. When we talk about a STEM pipeline, that implies a carefully engineered and maintained structure to get something from point A to point B. I'm an 80s Midwestern kid. A lot of the way we handle STEM education looks to me more like a skee ball alley. We roll a ball down the ramp, we launch it into space, and we hope it goes into the tiny circle at the top. I love skee ball, but it's not the model of STEM workforce development I want for my students or my own children. I think a couple of clear things we need to look at is rewarding our research faculty at universities and colleges with grants and tenure and promotion based on their mentorship of young students. Our faculty from underrepresented groups bear a disproportionate burden for mentoring students, particularly those from those underrepresented groups, and they do not necessarily benefit in their career from doing so. We want researchers to provide more access to these experiences, particularly to our young women. We need to reward them for doing so. We also need to train and staff that pipeline. We need to encourage careers in the STEM workforce, but we also need to encourage careers in K-12 STEM education by providing rewarding career paths and credit. Folks like myself that went through PhD programs but now work in a K-12 school as an educator are considered leaks or failures from the pipeline, but we're the ones training the next generation to solve the problems that we leave behind. And we also need to put resources into studying these experiences systematically. Dr. Miller's made a great start with the study of her program, but we need to do that on a broader scale to allow us to connect these K-12 experiences with undergraduate, postgraduate, and professional outcomes. So in the interest of time, I will end there, but I'd be happy to expand on any of these points in the Q&A or at a later time if anybody wants to contact me about that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Josh. You've got me hearing the sound of skee ball in the back of my brain. So next, we're turning to Kathy Rajveller, who is CEO and founder Ignite Worldwide. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can everybody see my screen? My name is Kathy Rajveller, and I'm the CEO and founder of Ignite Worldwide, Inspiring Girls Now in Technology Evolution. Ignite was founded in Seattle Public Schools in 1998. I actually worked in career and technical education, and my job was to make sure that young women in middle and high school knew about their opportunities in non-traditional careers, and that has always been STEM, at least since 1998. And the program was very successful. So at that time, in 2007, we did win the Best Gender Equity Program in the country from the ACTE Foundation, the ACTE program. So just to show you a little background, when we won this award, Senator Cantwell and Senator Murray looked at the work more closely, and we did a 5-year study at that point showing that before Ignite, the computer science classes, engineering classes, robotics programs were all under 5% female enrollment in Seattle Public Schools. And after Ignite, those programs went up to over 50% female enrollment. Some of the programs were even over 80% female enrollment. So it certainly was a milestone in the program. So what ended up happening is teachers from all around the state wanted to get in on how do you do this work and how do you do the program. And so I started a nonprofit to make sure that teachers, and especially CTE teachers, had access to the program and understand how it works. Going forward, 2022, here we are. The program is now a nationwide program where we do virtual events as well as in-person events. There is no cost to schools. Teachers simply sign on here, take our training, which is very short, sign up for our newsletter, and then they have immediate access to these events. Teachers actually get mentored by our program staff who work with them to create a schedule for the year, because this is not meant to be a one-time event at a school. This is meant to be a program. So the teachers commit to a certain amount of events every school year. And then they actually, for a lot of these events, they get to pick their own date and time, because we really want to remove any barriers that teachers have to doing these kinds of activities with young women. We're now in elementary school, middle school, high school, and college. So we serve all the grade levels. And teachers, we are deep here in Washington State, California, and now we're in 13 other states, and we're growing very quickly. So on the other side of it, we know that young girls need role models. So we work with literally thousands of women in STEM who come through here and take our training. We give a training to every volunteer who wants to work with girls, and to make sure that they know how to tell their story, that they understand what are the important things to focus on. And we actually require them to do a coaching session with us, which really helps volunteers feel comfortable and understand what are the things we're trying to focus on. So we help volunteers understand, like, how to tell your story. Tell the girls what were the struggles you were having when you were their age. How did you deal with those struggles? How did you overcome those struggles? What educational choices did you make? What led you to those choices? So we really help our volunteers to become great role models. And then on the other side of it, we work with many, many companies who can pick any kind of events that they want to do with the girls. And here's a representation of the companies that work with us. We expand every week. I mean, new companies join us all the time. It's really because the women who have gone into these careers in STEM have had so many obstacles, and they're so motivated to want to help the next generation to know how to face those obstacles and overcome them and gain the confidence that they need to do it. So we really work with literally thousands of volunteers in STEM. And so what do we do after an event? So what we want to do is, so this was last week or the week before. So every time we have an event, we write up an event report, we thank the volunteers, and more importantly, we capture, what did the girls learn in this particular session? And what did the girls report about this event? And we capture the comments from their surveys. And sometimes we get lots of comments because they're kids, and sometimes they write a lot and sometimes they don't write much at all. I'll give you some examples. So we have an elementary school program called Show and Tell. It can be for any grade level, kindergarten through fourth grade. And you can see here, we had a volunteer from Microsoft and one from Boeing. And what did the girls learn in this particular session? And the comments are just, here it is, fourth grade, I want to be an engineer. We really need to reach them young. And so they really see role models from the time that they're the youngest grades. And then we go into middle school and high school, and there's many examples here of, here's one high school. We've worked with Microsoft for over 20 years. So we thank our volunteers, and we, more importantly, get data and what did the girls learn? They learn about pretty much about 300 different kinds of career choices here in Ignite. There are so many different choices these days. How are young girls supposed to navigate or understand what the possibilities could be? And in the last few years, we've really expanded to university women, because they're still making decisions in these early stages of college, and we want them to have the support and see what the next steps are in their career choices. So you can see the amazing volunteers that we have coming through here from different companies, a gaming company and Google, and lots of different choices. So that girls see that there's small companies and big companies. There's so many different places that they can have a career and capture the statistics. And we use this data to understand girls' lives have changed from attending these events. And I know that because I did this program for 18 years in Seattle Public Schools, and now I see it succeeding here on this platform. And our goal is to be at least in every Title I school in our country. 9 out of 10 girls we serve are in low-income communities, Title I schools. And we really need to be expanding the program into every school. I do feel every girl deserves to have role models and understand what's possible for herself. And when she meets role models, she gets so much confidence. So there's so much here that we've learned, but we use all the best practices. Girls go with their friends to these events, and they invite their friends. If they come and the friend wasn't there, they'll invite them next time. So the program grows. We have about a third Ignite alumni serving on our advisory board. So many women come back and volunteer who have gone through this program. We've served about 100,000 girls to date in Washington, California, and now in other states. So I'd love to answer any questions, and I really appreciate the other panelists. And so thank you so much for inviting me here today, and thank you for your time.
Kathy. So our final speaker this afternoon is Dr. Jean Mekolajczyk, who is president of the Council of Undergraduate on Undergraduate Research. Jean?
Thank you, James, and thank you, panelists. This is just exciting to be here today, contributing to this critical conversation on behalf of the Council on Undergraduate Research. Our mission is to support and promote high-quality, mentored undergraduate research, scholarship, and creative inquiry. Our international member base of institutions and individuals come together to share successful models and strategies for establishing, nurturing, and institutionalizing undergraduate research programs, improve and assess institutional research environments, and create opportunities for students to disseminate their work on a national stage. As we've been hearing so far, there is a substantial body of evidence demonstrating the value of undergraduate research for all students, with disproportionately positive gains for underserved populations, including women. Our studies consistently report increased college retention and graduation. We heard a bit about that, and greater likelihood of enrolling in a graduate program of study for students who participate in undergraduate research. Beyond these traditional measures of success, the data also consistently demonstrate advancements in dispositions and social psychological constructs. Again, been hearing about some of those, confidence being an important one, the ability to work independently and overcome obstacles, increases in self-efficacy, cultivation of a science identity, clarification of career path, and leadership and professionalism. Finally, undergraduate research experiences are also found to enhance student learning. We heard Crystal mention this: growth in communication skills, critical thinking and teamwork, greater understanding of the research process, technical skills, and data analysis competencies. Indeed, these valuable skills, knowledge, and dispositions gained through these research experiences often appear in employer priorities in making hiring decisions, and can help women in STEM secure valuable positions and then navigate the workplace. A strong undergraduate research culture creates the foundation for a robust ecosystem within which all students can flourish. Factors that we know impact success. We've been hearing about these from the other panelists. we need to create engaging research opportunities that are relevant to young women, seek them out to participate and invite them in, cultivate supportive environments that create a sense of belonging. We also know representation matters. Seeing women in roles as mentors and leaders is important. We need diverse scientists in our classrooms at all levels. I'm going to say from K-20 in education, teaching, mentoring, and leading research. Quality mentorship matters, of course, as well. Clear, scaffolded expectations, dedicated one-on-one time, supporting professional development are all prominent features of strong undergraduate research mentorship. And cohorts help. Supporting minoritized students in groups helps build networks, navigational skills, and contacts for their next steps. High quality undergraduate research experiences and programs reduce barriers for success in higher education and position emerging diverse scientists for success in their next steps. We are also well served to focus our attention on models with demonstrated success. As we look to productive pathways in STEM education, we can consider building capacity in minority serving institutions by more intentionally and strategically including undergraduate research explicitly as part of the conversation. Ideally, undergraduate research should be clearly mentioned in all calls for funding. So I'm just going to build on everything that Josh had shared here. It's a critical component of the research enterprise and the STEM pipeline. And there are many opportunities working within existing structures for intentional and strategic consideration and leveraging. These high school to college pathways, we've been hearing a little bit about those in 2-year and 4-year higher ed partnerships and programs, in research institutions with nested undergraduate research mentoring models. And then finally, incentivizing some of these partners that we heard about earlier today in private corporations to actively engage with higher education and K-12 through undergraduate research in industry. And we also heard sometimes these practices are not necessarily referred to as undergraduate research as a bucket. We're hearing research co-ops, research apprenticeships, or research internships. So the data is clear. Undergraduate research experiences are a wise investment for government, private agencies, and institutions that are striving to foster interest and excellence in STEM education. That transition from high school to an undergraduate program is an inflection point that we need to pay attention to. As young women come out of these research-rich school experiences that we've been hearing about on the panel, meeting them with engaging undergraduate research opportunity builds that bridge between high school and graduate school or career. And as Josh had mentioned, not all young women or all students have access to these wonderful opportunities. For those folks coming into higher education, undergraduate research provides an opportunity to ignite and cultivate interest in STEM. As women advance in STEM, they need support to continue to advance in STEM. So undergraduate research experiences are really one way to offer that support in that targeted support in the undergraduate research or the undergraduate education space. Time and again, evidence demonstrates the value of undergraduate research for retention, graduation, growth in skills, knowledge, and dispositions that translate to employer priorities. As we strive to advance our nation's capacity to flourish in STEM, investing in undergraduate research will help grow our diverse pool of STEM professionals, strengthening our innovation, creativity, and ultimately our scientific advancements. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. So let me start off with a couple of questions and then we'll go to we've got some excellent questions in the panel, but I want to start with a question around definitions. So are we ready to offer up a definition of what we call a high quality experience in STEM? I mean, do we know enough about what characterizes, all the words in that sentence, right? Because one of the things as we get more sophisticated and start really looking at measures of confidence and career choices and other things, I think you're going to see an emphasis on these things, but I think that the quality matters as much as the opportunity, right? So tell me how well you think we can define what this experience is, so we can quantify it, we can emphasize it and make sure more people get those experiences and study who's getting them and so forth. How well can we define what a high quality experience is in the experiential realm, whether it's in a classroom or outside the school or an undergraduate or in the transitions to college? And Jean, why don't we go to you first?
Sure, thanks, James. Happy to chime in here on that one. Well, at Kerr, essentially, we define undergraduate research as hands-on learning through research experiences where undergraduates are mentored. And so I think that's the core of it. And I think we've heard a lot of the other kind of wraparound pieces that go with that. So there needs to be a supportive environment. There needs to be an invitation. There needs to be representation. Folks need to feel like it's okay to fail. We need to really normalize that because that's part of science, right? We learn things by finding out that things didn't work. So it's not only the core of this relationship, that quality mentoring experience, but also situating that within a supportive ecosystem that we are hearing about in both of actually all three of the programs, but both of the two schools that we heard from today. And I invite others to build.
So others on this question of how do we define what one of these experiences is?
Sure.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay. So I actually facilitated these kinds of events for 18 years in person, one event at a time. And I watched the girls respond to whatever we were presenting. And I would agree with my colleague here. It's really important to have a supportive environment. Number one, to have role models. I'll tell you one of the most important things that I think that girls need is an emotional connection to why should I care about this career? When they go by the computer lab or the engineering class and they see all boys in there, or the robotics club, what's their motivation for taking the chance and doing any of that? So they have to connect emotionally. And that's what we focus on here is women tell their story and explain what they were like when they were the girls' age. We actually mentor how to talk to the girls and what to focus on and how to encourage them, but also hands-on activities to go along with that is extremely important because they need to develop skills, like try different things. Like, what is it like when I code or when I build a Lego robot or whatever it is that the activity is? They need to have confidence by doing things. And also, the reason why I focused on all girls, I've done mixed events with boys and girls, and frankly, girls won't participate. They won't raise their hand, they won't speak up. And it's so important to try to encourage others to understand that we must have girl-only events, that they need a safe space when they're just starting out to be able to feel comfortable enough to speak up or to try to be a leader. Because oftentimes if they're in a mixed group with boys, look, I've seen it over and over. They don't get a chance to touch the materials or, there are a lot of, that's why being in the girls' school is such an advantage because they all get to participate and being a leader is natural for them there. So there's so many different pieces that need to go into this experience that will create an outcome where a girl says, I want to try that class. I really want to, and I'll bring my friends with me because we all went to that event together and it was fun, and let's all go to the school counselor office and get into that class, which I've seen over and over and over. Because I know that if you have a successful experience, the girls internalize it emotionally because they've heard women share their story and they've tried these things. So it equals a good outcome.
Thank you, Kathy. Any others on this question of how we define what these experiences are? Crystal or Josh?
Yeah, I can keep it brief, but I think building on Kathy, I think a part of that is ownership and seeing themselves in it. And I think Kathy was kind of saying that, but I know when I see my students taking on a project themselves and getting excited about it and learning it themselves so that they don't rely on just what they were told and they're spitting it back out, but when they see themselves producing the results, whether, they're positive or negative results, they own it and they get it and they can follow it through. And that gives them, again, it builds on that confidence layer and they start getting, they're feeding on it and getting more excited about it. And that pushes them forward.
I think I just build on that just slightly, that I think one of the important things when we look at, what kind of opportunities we want to match our students with is trying to understand what we're what we're trying to do in terms of their experience, and understanding STEM and research is not necessarily being narrowly defined by kind of the labels we might put on like a classroom or a textbook, but that several of the other panelists have talked very eloquently about the kinds of skills, the kinds of experiences you learn. So we focus a lot on there's mentorship and there's the student engagement and understanding, but it's also that project is really about the process being done, that research is a process, not a specific field. And so we have, this past summer, we had students that worked actually with a philosopher on the law and a project around the law and ethics that happened with space colonization. So STEM associated, but not necessarily using traditional, what we think of sort of STEM rudimentary skills, but the conceptual skills being employed were very next level with that. So we have to kind of watch what our definitions become, even around sort of STEM.
So let me segue off of that and say, now we've defined what the it is. What are the constraints on providing more of these kinds of experiences to girls in, say, the middle and high school grades? Unless we've got probably 3 or 4 other questions time to ask. So let's do the 1-minute response.
So the constraints are, some schools say if you don't have something equal for boys, we can't do the activity. So how do we answer this question as a nation? If we're going to go forward and include all girls, if we're especially Title I schools, we're going to have to answer the question and help people understand that girls need just a short period of time where they can have that experience like they do at the girls' school, just even a few chances to what is a leader. I mean, they won't get it in a mixed group because they're not on a level playing field. They're not coming from the same place as boys. Boys always felt like they belong, and typically, and they have a lot of experiences because people have been encouraging them, but girls don't have that experience. So if we can encourage schools to try to understand that they need to provide these experiences, if we're going to change the outcome of getting more women, especially women of color, into STEM, we must break down those barriers and that understanding.
Others? What are the constraints? Josh?
I think it kind of goes back to what I said during my my presentation, but we need to incentivize mentor participation along the career path that they've chosen to do. And that means, typically means money, promotion, credit from their department chairs and tenure committees or their bosses at their company. And, because these things take time and money, and we were doing a good job, a lot of us, with the people who are passionate and motivated in doing this. But the way we take this to a next level of society is we have to invest in it and not just rely on the people who are doing this as a passion project.
Crystal or Jean?
I agree with Josh. I think we need to invest in it. I know, Josh's school, at my school, they have seen this as a priority, and that's why we have people who run programs like this. And that might not be possible at every public school, but maybe it is. Maybe we need people who do that. And essentially, it's a big job because you're a coach and you're a mentor, and teachers already working very hard, and another science teacher doesn't have time to also be mentoring and coaching students through these different projects or extra efforts. So prioritizing, at the high school level, the coaches and mentors, and then again, encouraging people at the other levels when we work with them, whether it's in industry or universities, that they want to reach out, not because, again, they're only passionate about it, but because they also are benefiting from it, again, through promotion or whatever that is.
And the good news is we actually have some of these tools in place if we just make sort of slight changes in prioritization for how we rank grant proposals and looking at their broader impacts and things like that. So we have some of the tools already in place if we decide to use them in these ways.
And I just want to mention, James, that in our program, we do all the work for the teachers. Teachers are already too busy. So all they do is bring the group of girls, and actually the company does the work. They do the hosting, they do all of it. So essentially we take the work away from the teacher because that's what they need.
Jean?
I'm just going to build on all the excellent points that my colleagues have made here. It really comes down to incentivization and valuing and naming what we seek to accomplish, right? So going back to what Josh said earlier, if we want to invest in undergraduate research, then we need to see undergraduate research specifically stated in policy, right? And if faculty or industry is going to, if we really want advancements, then we just need to shift our priorities. The structures are there. There's a lot of opportunity. It's just investing in the things that we know that work. And undergraduate research is one of them.
So I want to turn to some of the questions and comments we've had from the audience. So one of the questions was there are several questions around the role of parents. What are some of the considerations for how parents factor into some of the social and emotional factors like confidence and perceptions and other things? And, do they play a role in encouraging or discouraging career choices in this particular space? Crystal, can we start with you?
Sure. I would say, since I teach at a girls' school and parents are sending them, to a private school, most of their parents are behind them 100%. In fact, sometimes they're behind them all too much, putting a little too much pressure there. Anyone who's taught in a private school might have experienced that. So I feel like in my population of students, parental encouragement is incredible. A lot of them have great role models in their own parents and the people that they see. But I also know that this isn't typical for most women in our country and for most experiences that they have. And so that is one of the parts of when, we were putting this study together for the paper, was comparing them, our students, to other groups who would be a good comparison. And again, nationally, females don't have that as a typical experience. So, I think Kathy, being in all these different public schools, might have a better opinion of that and be able to speak more to it.
Josh, parents, what's their role in this equation?
So a little bit like Crystal, is we are, with our residential program, we have sort of a selective self-selected population that definitely are generally very supportive of their students. Again, sometimes a little bit too much. But what my experience has been is, I think, obviously there are folks that do not have, a positive relationship with their parents, but for the students that that aren't in those kinds of circumstances, the parents generally want their students the best for them. It's just sometimes their own personal experience or awareness of careers or things like that is narrow, and so they're trying to say, what do we think will work well for our child, for our daughter? And often their experience is narrow, and that may be that they aren't actually narrowing the fields, but when I was a kid and I was interested in biology, everybody was like, "Oh, you're going to be a medical doctor," because They weren't trying to constrain me. They were actually trying to be encouraging. It was just the only thing they knew you could do with an interest in biology. And so I find that our role is really to try to meet the parents where they are in terms of what they're wanting. They're, at least believing that they want the best for their student, and then getting them to try and trust and have confidence in us that basically we know more about educating and promoting their student in these realms than they do, without talking down to them about it, because they probably know way more about their chosen profession than I do about mine. But I spend each day, every day, thinking about high school student research experiences. And so, it's getting them to trust in that. But we also have an audience that's a little bit primed to believe in that because they've chosen to be part of our community. It's a little bit easier of a sell.
Part of this is the prevalence of the view that I'm a math person or not a math person, right? Or I'm a science person or I'm not. I mean, only a small sliver of the society we live in considers themselves a science or math person, right? So you're sort of starting with that as an implicit bias when you talk about parents writ large. Jean or Kathy, any other views on this question of how, what's the role of parents?
I just like to get something in here. I want to acknowledge Lawrence's comment. Our program, Ignite Worldwide, is really geared towards young women of color. Young women of color are underrepresented so significantly. When we comment on the percentages of women in STEM, that doesn't account for women of color. They're under 5% in every group. And it's appalling. And Ignite Worldwide is focused on Title I schools, and the parents in these schools love Ignite Worldwide because our role models are women who look like the girls. We have a very diverse panels and volunteers, groups of women who are in front of the girls. Girls need to see women who look like them. And the parents are totally on board with this work. It's just that we need to get more of it in the schools in order to change the outcomes in our country that we want to see. And what we really need to see is changes in communities of color. And that's why the Ignite program is focused on Title I schools.
Anything on this question of parents?
Really just to reinforce, I sit in a bit of a different space, in the higher ed realm. Parents are differently situated to their students in this space than they are in K-12. At the same time, they do have a significant influence. And I think kind of going back to what was shared earlier, they don't know what they don't know, right? So I think all parents, have the best interests of their children in mind, or most parents, we want to think all parents, right, want the best for their children. But there are things that they don't know, or things that are outside of their experiences, or the biases, like you said, James, kind of coming in. And I think going back to what some of the panelists shared about the relevancy and engagement with what the topic is. So, you talked about being a math person or not a math person. Well, I like math as it's connected to architecture, maybe, right? And so connecting it to something that's of interest, and that can reframe the conversation. So I think I think it's multifaceted, and I think educating our society about the opportunities that currently exist, and let's face it, there are lots of occupations that we don't even know what they are yet, that the students that we are teaching are going to be moving into. So helping them think about these processes and think about this material in ways that are relevant to them, they're going to take the creativity and the innovation that they're learning through these research experiences, and they're going to invent the next thing. So I think just focusing on the excitement and attachment and relevancy can help everyone in their learning.
So to your point, Jean, about not knowing what the unknowns in this equation around career opportunities, how do we handle the question of sort of the college track and the non-career track in the STEM world, right? Because, people have pointed out in the chat, something like 50% of the jobs that we call STEM jobs don't require a college degree, but they require some other form of training, whether it's in higher education or a 2-year program or a certification or something of those kinds. Are those experiences starting to be reflected in these kind of experiential models that, people think of chemistry, they think of a chemistry lab, right? But they may not think about all the other ways in which you can employ these different skills that are sort of not in those traditional boxes. How do you handle the fact that these jobs are changing really fast? Is it driven by employer input? Does it require teachers to be sensitive to those new pathways and maybe not biased against them? What can you say about that?
I'd love to comment on that.
Sure.
So working in the Seattle schools for 18 years, when a student picks a career and technical education class, oftentimes they can't take a language or play in the band because there isn't enough room in their schedule. And so we need to change policy in this country. We're so lagging behind in what career and technical education offers. They offer a career pathway into the high wage, high demand careers that we can't even fill in our country. Skilled trades, everything that you can think of in STEM, we're not filling the jobs that are open in our own country. And yet in our schools, the kids can't take a career and technical education class if they're on the college track. This is a problem. We need to fix it. And we need to also fix the perception of what career and technical education is.
So let me ask one last question since we're nearing the end of our time. So we just got on an elevator with a member of Congress and you've got a minute. What would you tell them about this topic? Clock is ticking.
Okay. So if I had a moment, an elevator moment, I would ask them if they are familiar with Ignite. I would try to help them understand that we're solving something in this country that really matters. Getting more women of color into STEM, the statistics are abysmal. I really believe that every girl deserves to have role models and deserves to have the support and encouragement at her school during the school day. Not every student has the privilege of staying after school or going to a summer program. So we need to make sure that they're getting it in school.
Excellent. And you beat it by 5 seconds. Josh?
I would point out that actually the a well-educated population in STEM is part and parcel to having that workforce, but also a supportive society. And so pushing these experiences into the K-12 space as much as possible and building up the education workforce to train them is essential. And providing these experiences through funding mechanisms, as we've seen the success with the promotion of REU programs and the impact that has had on the access to undergraduate research experiences, needs to be moved down into the K-12 landscape so we can contact students that aren't just on that 4-year college path, but are also on the path to technical training and things like that that are necessary to fill out our STEM workforce and our society.
Jean?
Sure, thanks, James. I would say that undergraduate research is an evidence-based and powerful tool to increase persistence and retention in STEM, especially for women and other minoritized populations. Undergraduate research is a career readiness tool because it builds the skills, knowledge, and dispositions needed for our workforce and that we see our employers saying are their priorities. And it should be explicitly mentioned in calls for funding, solicitations, and statutes so that we can focus in on the value of it and how it works and add it more across our nation.
So Crystal, I'm going to give you the last word because it was really a delight when you reached out with the idea for this briefing. As the father of a 6th grade girl who's contemplating all these questions, I've definitely learned something. So I'm going to give you the last word.
All right. So I think I would say that, we need to remember that our population is brilliant and creative, and we need to capture everyone. Those are the women, those are the minorities. And so we need to really think about from the ground up through K-12 education, how we can capture their hearts and have them set forth on a way that puts them in a position where they can contribute to some of the hardest questions facing our country. whether it be disease or technology, that they can make a difference in those areas. And so to capture that, we need to incentivize people to encourage younger students. We need to put that into the grant writing, to NSF grants, to all kinds of NIH grants, so that they are willing to take students under their wing, to participate in programs like Ignite, to go out of their way to encourage our students, all of them, to pursue STEM fields.
Thank you, Crystal, and thanks to the rest of our panelists. And we hope you enjoyed the show. We will be back in another month. See you soon.